Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, you got your bass line going there, Timo.
I think, well, first of all, Tchaikovsky's writing's magical and unique and so tender and sparkly. But that she was the one I was the most impressed with out of all the singers we've checked out. I thought I was most taken with her. And I noticed that she's also the only one who isn't 90 years old.
Right.
Born in
So there is hope, right?
born in 1971, I think the youngest.
I know, she's even younger than me. Weird.
And Russian has never sounded so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
You know, Russian can be a beautiful language in music, in opera. And when you think about the fact that opera, Western opera, I mean, namely that came from Italy and Germany, the whole tradition, really only started in earnest in Russia, I mean, by Russian composers in about 1830s with Glinka.
That's right.
And yet Russia, so much of Russian history and culture is fascinating in the sense that they wanted to quickly absorb European culture and create their own version of it. And when it comes to classical music, it's astounding that between 1830s and 1870s, when we already have Tchaikovsky, Mussorgsky, Kui, Rimsky-Korsakov, all these great Russian composers, that they like mastered it and did it in that short a time and created their whole own oeuvre of repertoire of operas.
Yeah, in my studies, you're hitting it all. That's right. That's right. They were, you have to think about Russia was a backwards place of illiteracy.
Yeah.
And only people who were oriented to the West, particularly to France, had any kind of culture. Or you could go to Italy or France. You could look those ways, and there was always pessimism with going to the Germans, but the Germans are so great at the mathematics of composing that they would go there. And then someone like Glinka, that's still Germanic music. Even Tchaikovsky is fundamentally still Germanic. He's the first one to start really having the Russian overtones coming in, probably because of his long-suffering life. The Russian soul of long suffering, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then very consciously, in the biographical material I've been working on with Rimsky-Korsakov, you see that this was really consciously trying to bring in, as he called it, quote, the Orientalisms of Russia into the music, Yeah.
Also, I connected to the great authors that were emerging from Russia at that same time. I mean, the Dostoevskys and that kind of thing. There was
Chekhov.
There was quite a cultural explosion there between the music and the writing and pretty amazing.
And then look at the most important wave in a lot of ways was the Diaghilev wave in the early 1900s, and that included Scheherazade, Rimsky-Korsakov, Stravinsky's teacher, and then that includes Nijinsky, which turns into modern dance for the next century. Everything coming out of Diaghilev's programming was ballet, it was orchestral music, it was opera, it was art, it was theater. I mean, it's this massive sea change to modernism. It's directly resulted from these Russian crazy people going to France, right? and Diaghilev was in the employ of the Tsar, and he was an upper crust person himself, and he was hired by the Tsar's artistic director to forward and advance Russian culture in the West.
That's right, yeah.
Well, now we come to our final performer, and back to our categories of the countertenor, and that's the highest singer, right?
This is like castrati style.
Well,
here.
That's what I was going to get to. We can't have a show about opera and not bring up the castrati. That's what everybody's curious about. Come on. So tell us about that strange history that at the time wasn't considered strange at all, and now the modern equivalent or the close equivalent to that in this countertenor, David Daniels.
Right. So the castrati of the 17th century really came about first because of music in the Catholic Church, which could only be sung by, was normally only sung by young boys in that ethereal, very high range, which is like a soprano's range. And there came about this desire, well, we don't want this boy's voice to change. We want it to last forever in that beautiful, high, ethereal way. So let's castrate him and keep the voice the same.
Oh, my God.
So somebody discovered this, that if at age 13 or 14, if you pick just the right time to make it happen, the voice would remain in its pure, ethereal, high range. And
is there also an element of women not being allowed to perform?
Not really. I mean, only in the church. In theaters and opera houses, women did have all these roles were written for women.
But in church, the women couldn't perform in church, though.
Correct. So as a result, opera composers started composing roles for these particular singers. It didn't happen a lot. There were only a handful of these men who had extraordinarily high, beautiful voices. But it became the vogue, the trend, especially when you get to someone like Handel, who wrote many of his heroic roles for this kind of voice. And as a result of castration falling out of favor as a way to create great singers, countertenors is the current modern version of that. Men who have developed an incredibly high head voice, falsetto voice.
Maybe they have a secret they're not sharing with us. Maybe they have taken some kind of medications to make this happen.
However, when we hear countertenors sing today, you can still sort of always tell that it's a falsetto voice.
Oh, okay.
Placed way up high in the head. And there are a couple recordings in the very beginning of the recording era of a couple castrato singers who were already aged. But when you hear those recordings, you hear a much more like muscular, robust sound than we hear in a modern day countertenor. There was something different about the voice. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's hear David Daniels. And what is he going to be singing?
So David Daniels sings Venti Turbini from Rinaldo by Handel, which is a tour de force aria, which you will hear now. Yeah.